I'd like to start now, go straight into the next session, which talks about the importance of communications literacy to industry. And I think this is a very important session because I think one of the fears of industry is that when we talk about media literacy or communications literacy, or we talk about filtering or any of those things, they fear we're going to have a chilling effect on their business propositions. And I hope that you will see with this group of speakers that we're very honoured to have here, that isn't in fact how it works. And I hope that you will be able to ask them some questions at the end of the session. I'm going to keep them very much to their time, so you will have plenty of opportunity to ask questions. And I'd like to open with Dr. Kareem Sabbagh. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the International Institute of Communication and ictQATAR for inviting me to participate to this important discussion. And it's a privilege to be with my colleague panelists on this window. What I would like to do is to put some facts behind the discussion of digital communication in the Middle East. I think from the distinguished speakers this morning, we've heard a lot about how digital communication and digital literacy is evolving and advancing, pretty much from a global perspective and from an Australian angle too. And I think it's going to be relevant to bring back this discussion to our part of the world. Now, it's going to be difficult to have this discussion unless we put this into the context of what is enabling or contributing to the development of our region, how our region is changing or has been changing over the past 10 years. And I would like to put to you that there are five sort of dynamics that are social economics, and they are important to sort of capture before we move into digital communication. Our region is mostly about tensions, and when I talk about tension, it's positive tension. It's always the tension between growth and balance. The first one has to do with our tradition, our culture, which seeks more of a stable environment, of a stable context, of a stable ecosystem. But the fact that in the 21st century, with digital communication, we're going to tolerate also some volatility. And the question this morning started to air on this side of the discussion. There's also a lot of and moving on to the second point, our region is very much prone to hands-on management. I wouldn't say control, but there is a stronger affinity to see that things are well ordered, well organized. And there is a realization also that in the 21st century, there has to be a bit of a laissez-faire, and particularly with the youth generation coming into to the mainstream economy. The third observation is that our economy is still primarily an economy that is driven by the public sector or the government. But at the same time, there's a growing window for the private sector to come in, and hence the contradiction in the term of public privatization. The fourth dynamic has to do with fast and slow talent strategy. On the one hand, we have an extraordinary pool of talent coming into the market, this whole youth generation. And at the same time, a realization that we don't yet have all the skills and the capabilities required to take on the challenges of the 21st century. So there's a fast inflow, but at the same time, a slow build-up of the capabilities. And how do you manage these two tension is going to be one of those challenges. And last but not least, open nationalism. Increasingly, as we open up this region to the part of the world, there's a sense of pride in our culture and our national values, and at the same time, making sure that we remain open. So put into context, the digital discussion is important because otherwise we'll just talk about a technology per se and we forget about what is the fabric that matches this technology. Now, if you come to the technology and what is happening, there are four major trends, and Jeff has sort of tackled them this morning. One is an accelerated digitization in our part of the world. Two, the ubiquity of content access. Three is the demographic enablers, and I will talk about them, and it has to be more than youth. And last but not least, and to borrow from Don Tapscott's latest book, is a growing up digital society in our part of the world, and this is not an exclusively Western concept. Let's put some number. We today in the MENA region have something close to 60 million connected users. And I'm being agnostic whether these are fixed or wireless. There are today close to 60 million individuals who are connected to the web. Depending on which number you look at, probably there are 30 million connections And then, depending on how people have access and where, you can pretty much extrapolate and project this to 60 million. What is more interesting is that by 2014, this number will nearly double. And that's what's important to us. And nearly doubling means that we will reach an accessibility rate or a penetration rate of close to 30%. So that's a bit the magic number that Jeff referred to earlier this morning. So we're not far off from this mark. I'll concede to you that this projection will err on the conservative side, and probably reality will come back and surprise us in a positive manner. And what I put here is just the large countries for the message, to underscore the message that it is unlikely that any of the large countries that are economically challenged will be left behind. So naturally, we would expect Saudi Arabia to be there. But I will also put forward to you that countries like Egypt, who may not have the same economic enablers, will also be there in this digital generation. However, the landscape is going to change. If you take a dipstick as how people in our part of the world is going to access this digital world, what's going to be the screen, clearly the traditional media are going to lose the battle, whether it's starting from the left with the dailies, the magazines, the traditional TVs, the radios, the VCR. This will continue to prevail, as Jeff has observed, but the relevance is the growing relevance is going to go elsewhere, and it's on the right hand of the screen. It's in PCs, but mostly into mobile. The primary device is going to be mobile, whether it's a mini iPhone or the mega iPhone, no matter what you call it, is going to be something that we can carry with us. And to extrapolate, Japan has an interesting case. They have a social network by the name of Mixi, and it has around 18 million users. 12 of the 18 million users access it via their mobile phones. They do not access it via PC. I'll give you another immediate observation. Recently, the Telecom Regulatory Authority in the UAE made a statement to the effect that they are likely to endorse more of a laissez-faire attitude when it comes to price control. So they said, we want to promote more competition along tariffs and prices. And what this has triggered is a very interesting discussion on Twitter among end users. And I could observe from seniors I interact with, both Abdul and Etisalat, how they were following this sort of Twitter trail to see what consumers were saying. So suddenly a policy was almost getting an immediate vote of yes or no. Most of them were yes, Muhammad, so just to reassure you. They were very happy with the statement. All of this was done via mobile phone. It was not via PC. So that's a reality that we'll be facing sooner rather than later, and that's a survey we conducted almost a year and a half ago, both in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And I would submit to you that if we took this dipstick in Qatar, it's going to be very comparable. Now, the challenge is going to be where the screen is going. What is going to be the destination? Because it's one thing to talk about the highway. It's one thing to talk about the access means, so the car, the bus, the train, so that's the device. It's another thing to talk about the destination. At the moment, the dominant destinations are the TVs. So we're talking about the likes of Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya. This is what's being accessed today in the online world. So I'm not talking about TV and audiovisual. I'm talking TV in the online version of them. In the blue area, you will see the more traditional dailies. So the likes of Al-Riyadh, Al-Ahram, Sharq al-Awsat, and what have you. What is interesting is you look into the gray area, these are the new dailies that came up only with the online version. And you could see that their readership is almost higher, if not higher, than the traditional version of the traditional dailies. So that's quite of an interesting observation. Just to name a few, Sabbagh in Saudi Arabia, Akhbar in Egypt, Yom in Egypt, and others. And again, this is not meant to be exhaustive. This is just to drive the point that the emergence of internet players or new media just in the online form is taking over the traditional ones. But we're not there yet. We're still very, very subscale. Let me put some numbers, because at the end of the day, these media institutions have to make a living. They need to earn money. If you look at the UAE, which is probably the most advanced market from an advertising standpoint, whether it's online or traditional, you can observe that the average number of campaigns per month for the top sites like Maktoum or AME Info could range between 50 and 60. That's a fraction of the equivalent or a comparable medium in the Western world. Let me put some number behind it. In our part of the world, on average, the spending on online media in terms of advertising is probably close to $1 per capita. In the developed market or in the US, it's closer to 40. So you could see the sort of the delta between these two paradigms and how much we still need to cover so that the online world becomes economically viable. One way of doing that is certainly via the advertising model. On the right-hand side is a ranking of the top the top audiences news websites in the Middle East. And we deliberately excluded the top three, natural top three, which in no particular order are Google, Facebook, and Yahoo, because these will sort of completely dwarf these. But if I take out these giants, then you can start looking at Maktoum in position number 160 globally, and then Al Jazeera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're on the global map, but certainly not in the top 100, and I think we can get better than this. Now, where's the growth going to come from a demographic standpoint? Certainly it's youth, and Jeff talked about it. And my hypothesis to you is that the other major engine is going to be women, the women's segment. I was recently in a conference in Singapore where there was a lot of discussion around China and India and what these represents in terms of economic engine for the 21st century. And my observation to the audience there was that there was a third force that we're still not paying attention to, which was the third billion, which is the women's segment, women who haven't had the opportunity yet to get the education they deserve and or to participate economically in a way that where they can realize their full potential. So you have this completely third billion that is not accounted for. Now, in the Middle East, it's not going to be a billion per se. The total population is closer to 300 million. But I can tell you it's going to be as important as the whole youth discussion, and we haven't paid attention adequately to it. And these are going to be the two engines. These are the engines that will drive online connectedness at a compounded annual growth rate of 13% year in, year out. Now, what they will be looking for, the youth and the female socialites will be looking for the typical content in the online world that they would want to have in their real life. Sports, game, but importantly, social media. And again, Jeff has talked a lot about this morning. We're still very, very short on social media. In fact, Facebook is quite strong in our part of the world, and there has to be something better that we can offer that is better customized to our audience. And when we look at the current players and the current offerings, we're starting to get there, but we're certainly not fulfilling the demand. And to conclude on my observation, certainly this part of the world is growing up digital, but there are four things that we need to pay attention to. We have an increasingly young and affluent set of societies in the Middle East, and this is going to be an unprecedented seed for social and economic development. They are pro-choice, extremely knowledgeable, they're very good scrutinizers, they seek integration, so I would tend to disagree with the view that these communities are shrinking and sort of isolating people. And last but not least, they get to do things much faster than our generation. Now, one of the biggest challenges we have is that people like me, people like many in the room, so people who were born pre-1985, are trying to figure out digital literacy policies for the next generation, the generation that was born post-1985. And it's always very challenging because it is not in our DNA. We learn it, we use it, but we don't have it in our DNA like the generation that is post-1985. So as we sort of lay out these policies, it's always important to sort of judge them not from our own perspective and regulation, but from the perspective of the generation that will be the true recipient of them. And this generation, to move to my second point, is very tech-savvy. But in the Middle East, the experience, the destination is still very limited. And as long as it's limited, the opportunity cost is very high. In many studies we've done with ictQATAR, we have observed that for every 10% growth in ICT development, and certainly the whole digital literacy is one of them, there is a 1% enabler in general economic growth. And as long as we don't realize the full potential of the destination, then we're not going to fully realize the economic potential. Policies also will remain at the moment mostly mixed and ambiguous in relation to the digital space in general and content in specific. And at the moment, it has to do more with enforcement and managed access. And probably this is a way to start. But again, this is going to be restrictive because we need to think about these policies with a view of the next generation, not our generation per se. So maybe in the future, regulation could be geared more towards user education and incentives to do the right thing. To borrow from the late Jean-Jacques Lafont, who introduced the concept of incentive-based regulation, maybe this is how we should think about it. On the one hand, we provide adequate education, adequate safeguard, and then what are the incentives we as regulators are going to put in place so that the right thing happen in terms of service provider behaviors and user behaviors. So taking this forward-looking approach and avoid being trapped in the mindset that has governed traditional media in the past. And again, this is not Middle East specific as an observation. This is the sort of evolution that all economies had to go through. So on this note, I would like to conclude my brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hand over now to Adrian Mills from the BBC.
First of all, I'd like to thank the ICC and ictQATAR for the invitation to join you today. It's great to be here, not only to present to you, but to learn from you too. I just want to make one quick reference. When Jeff Cole this morning, Coles, talked about the Facebook generation, it rang a real bell with me. My mother, who is closer to 100 than 50, is on Facebook and is driving our family crazy. Not only is she on Facebook, somebody's put her on MSN chat. And it is now impossible for any member of my family, and I'm one of 6 children, so you can imagine how large that family is, to go online without Sabbagh pinging a message to say, where are you, what are you doing, when are you coming to see me? And her grandchildren call her Sabbagh the online predator. And so we're all looking for whatever is the next version of Facebook, and we're not going to tell her. I'm going to not present a lot of data to you today, but it's a bit of a show and tell about the BBC's wider work on media literacy and show you some examples of how that plays itself out in practice within the children's department. And don't worry, for those of you who aren't children's specialists, I'm not going to show lots of cartoons, so don't get too upset about that. As far as a business proposition is concerned, digital literacy is at the heart of the BBC's Reithian mission to educate, and inform and entertain, and through its long-standing tradition of promoting learning and supporting the vulnerable and the underserved, digital communications literacy is written into the BBC's DNA. The BBC actively promotes media literacy across its output on radio, on television and online, and recently launched a media literacy website, which I'm just going to do this. This is so that you can look at pretty pictures rather than me. Excuse me. See, this is the awful thing about getting older. You have to put these on to see F11. Is there? There you go. And the site, actually, interesting enough, completely follows the categories that Leslie Osborne was talking about from the ACMA about use, understand and create. And this site, under use, for example, will show how computers, mobile phones, radio and TV can be used to watch, listen, create and search in daily life. What information is out there and what you can do with it. Under Understand helps you discover more about modern media, including choosing the best sources of information and understanding your digital identity. And under Create, it helps you explore sites that help you create your own content inspired by your favourite TV and radio programmes. And the BBC uses all its major brands and major celebrities to promote that site. There we go. The BBC, Dr. Cole referred to the digital media divide earlier this morning, and the big issue remains for the BBC, digital inclusion and access. Almost 14 million UK adults do not have internet access at home, and of those, almost 11 million do not access the internet anywhere else either. So almost 1/5 of UK adults are excluded from the internet and its benefits. As Sita Kumar, the BBC controller of online, says, this is a very significant segment of society who risk getting left behind as the web becomes more and more embedded in our daily lives. The BBC works hard to promote the benefits of the web, and the tools and resources the BBC provides through radio and TV campaigns, for example, the Get Online campaign last October, as one example of that. We also work in partnership. This is quite an important strategy for us, in partnership with organisations and groups in the public, private and third sectors with powerful networks which can reach some of those 14 million. and particularly the 4 million with no access in ways that the BBC couldn't on its own. I'm going to segue very quickly to children's, the digital natives, as we call them. And again, the commitment to digital communications literacy is at the heart of the BBC's offer for children. And I'm going to take for granted here, as I said, I'm not going to present lots of data, that we know that about the importance of digital media for children. We have two main channels of distribution for children. We have the CBeebies on the left for children 2 to 6 and CBBC for children 6 to 12. And both have a remit to provide a stimulating, creative and enjoyable environment that is also safe and trusted, with a particular focus on informal learning and an emphasis on encouraging participation. CBBC output is via a dedicated digital channel which runs 12 hours a day, on weekday afternoons on BBC One, mornings on BBC Two, and afternoons on the BBC HD channel. The channel output is mixed genre, with live action, animation, drama, entertainment, comedy, factual, and news programming for children. Underpinning CBC are 6 public purposes: sustaining citizenship and society, promoting education and learning, stimulating creativity and cultural excellence, delivering the benefits of emerging communications technologies, reflecting the UK, its nations, regions and communities, and bringing the UK to the world and the world to the UK. While media literacy cuts across each of these, the main weight of activity for us lies with the 4th, delivering the benefit of emerging communications technologies. CBBC is a multi-platform offer, with linear media and online working together to reinforce, extend and complement each other. I'm going to skip because I'm editing. Our website reaches about 900,000 unique users per month, provides a range of opportunities for children to consume and interact with content directly on the web through single multiplayer gaming and other opportunities to use their creative and critical skills to the full. We provide a dedicated, safe, creative space called My CBBC. Sorry, I used to work for CBC in Canada, and I now find it almost impossible to say CBBC. Here's the site there. And building media literacy is key to the CBBC, My CBBC offer. Here's the site. Within this space, children can create content and share it with their friends. Safe peer mentoring is provided, and the dedicated Children's iPlayer provides a safe environment for children to access content on demand. One of our biggest projects is called Me and My Movie. This is a partnership. Oh, can't be found. There you go. It's a fantastic site. One of the biggest projects is called Me and My Movie, and it's a partnership between BBC Children's, BBC Learning and BAFTA, the British Academy of Film and Television Arts. And it enables children across the UK to tell their own stories and make their own movies. The website provides a 3D digital space where children can engage with the experience of filmmaking. They can learn more about filmmaking in the how-to room with fun interactive tutorials and have a go at editing footage in the mashup room with pre-recorded clips and audio. Staying safe is critical for us. And as I mentioned earlier, a safe and trusted environment is a core value of the BBC Children's offer. Beyond the environments we provide, we also encourage safe behaviours, especially as children are avaricious when it comes to online activities and often aren't restricted to the safety of the BBC sites. The CBBC Stay Safe site, I'm going to see if I can get there, it's here, provides a range of resources for children which teach them the basics of safe internet behaviour. And there are also links over here to a range of organisations that also provides help and support them. Safe Cyber Mentors, ChildNet and other organisations dedicated to keeping children safe online. We also work with parents who are key to this, particularly on internet safety. As Professor Tanya Byron, whose report on internet safety led to the creation of the UK Council for Child Internet Safety, says, letting your kids use the web completely unsupervised is like opening your own door and saying they don't know how to cross the road, but they'll work it out. So, as a public service broadcaster, it's our job to help children of all ages so that they can take advantage of the tremendous social, cultural and educational benefits of digital media, but in safety. Thank you very much, and there's my contact details if anybody would like to follow up. Thank you.
I'd like to hand over to Annie Mullins now from Vodafone.
Hello. I haven't got any slides. I got the brief that they weren't popular, and I didn't wish to technically challenge myself, so I am going to talk to you. I'm from Vodafone. I've got responsibility globally to do editorial standards. We call it content standards, and I've been doing this for about 10 years. I used to work for Yahoo, and indeed I come, in fact, from a child protection background a very long time ago. I've been at the forefront of much of the self-regulation that's been taking place both in the UK and at a European level. For the UK government, I chaired most recently the social networking and interactive services good practice guidance, which got support from the US and Australia. And that was, in a sense, the first attempt at something a little bit more global than just the UK or a single national country on its own trying to do something about what is ultimately a global phenomena where, in fact, humanity is connecting itself to each other. And that's one of the biggest challenges around the whole internet. Perhaps one of the fears is the global nature of it, is how do we control it? Can it be controlled? I mean, these are the big questions taking place. And what role does industry play in managing, I guess from our sense, being responsible or managing and controlling that, you know, internet as it is at the moment? Some of the stuff we've done in self-regulation, I think self-regulation itself is important. I think it's important because this is still a very fast-moving, creative, you know, industry that has got a long way to go. And I think as governments we've seen already, and even some of the initiatives I'm involved at present, I think they're trying to deal retrospectively rather than with the current and the future, and that by the time they've managed to get round to creating some standards, they'll already be out of date within a couple of weeks or months, really. And I think that's one of the challenges about how do we manage this environment that is so fast changing, and that it's not easy to corral and to put easy things in place that make everybody safe or make everybody responsible. Perhaps one of the biggest challenges has been user-generated content, and certainly we've seen companies like my own and others being held responsible for what others have done, in a sense, what they've written, what they've posted, what they've said to other people, what videos they've taken. And there's a very uncomfortable position about opening up people to have communities and to have space and to talk and to share, to build communities. Because in a sense, sometimes industry is asked to take the role of judge and jury. Is this wrong? Is this right? Is it correct? These are difficult issues, and they're things that I think we're going to grapple with for a long time. And I think industry will resist being the judge and jury of the state. I mean, I was listening to something, there's a very good programme I should alert you to on the BBC at the moment called The Digital Revolution. And you'll see people like Tim Berners-Lee, the founder of the internet, allegedly. I believe he's an Englishman, so that's one for them. And people like Bill Gates are talking about, it was recorded in the last year. So they're looking forward, they're looking at where we are now, and what do we think the challenges are. So I'd really recommend, if you can tune into that, I know it's on iPlayer, I don't know if that's worldwide, but certainly there's a website and you can see some of the comments there from these people about where we are now, what's possible, and how are we going to manage this. And certainly, you know, these big questions of humanity and freedom of expression, and who is the judge and jury about what's allowed and not allowed. It's easy for us to deal with illegal, because illegal is illegal. You just deal with it if you find it and it's brought to your attention. But certainly with people's speech, and, you know, I could give you some examples. I've been particularly involved with the child safety perspective of dealing with things like initially dealing with predators where children are sexually exploited and that kind of content on the internet, to things that get more problematic, like children and young people talking about suicide, talking about anorexia, talking about all sorts of stuff in their lives that actually you could on one hand say, well, why are you allowing, and we have been put on the spot about creating platforms for them to discuss these issues. Why are we allowing them to discuss this? Is that good or is that bad? Some would say that it's support and it's the first time and it's the only place they've been able to actually talk openly or find others that they could express some of the feelings that they've got. And actually some people are very supportive to them. On the other hand, sometimes people are encouraging each other to do more self-harm, more damage to themselves or to others. Bullying has been a phenomenal problem, and certainly I've been involved very much in some big media literacy projects, because I think from industry we sit in this uncomfortable position because we get a lot of pressure, particularly if things go to the media. You'll see a sensational reaction in a sense, which becomes very quickly political, because, you know, one bad issue, one particular problem can mean that it's like a, you know, this is it's all got out of control. We've got to do something. We can't allow this. Something must be done, and that's a constant theme, particularly in the UK. We have a particular kind of media that does sensationalise a little bit, and, you know, we do find ourselves in that position where some of the positive things and the good things that are happening amongst people are never reported, actually, you know, where people have found help. But the sensationalism does become a political issue. It becomes political for regulators. Nobody likes those headlines, and particularly where we have elections, we start to see a sort of fever developing, and we start to see a dialogue or much more pronouncements about how industry must be much more responsible. I think many of the big companies, and I've been involved, and I gave out a little leaflet today. This is one initiative I've been involved in, is Teach Today. And that's, you can see all the companies at the bottom of that. That's some of the major big companies in the world that we brought together. And that was at a point where we were getting very bad headlines from groups in the UK called teacher unions. I don't know if you have such things, but they're in the Middle East, but they're advocacy groups for teachers who were really finding it uncomfortable, the whole notion of children's use of technologies. And they were bringing, for example, their mobiles into school, taking videos of teachers, posting them, making all sorts of comments, you know, which weren't very nice for the teachers. And there was a feeling and a call from, you know, which went very political, to the headlines, to, you know, ministers of state making statements that the industry needed to do much more, be more responsible. And they wanted, I think at one point, they wanted us to filter every single video ever put on YouTube or the internet, on social networking sites, to make sure that no teacher was subject to a video that was not very pleasant about them. There are some difficult issues there, if you unpack that, about children and about their right to expression. I mean, I've certainly seen videos of children being beaten by teachers, which, you know, you could say this was a call for help, really, because they had caught a teacher doing very bad things to children. So we saw, again, it wasn't just one-sided. There was a range of content, and some of it was derisory to teachers. There was no doubt about it. But it was interesting when the adults came under threat from the children. So we often talk about protecting the children, but I wonder how much we need to protect ourselves. The adults needed protecting from the children, and the children from each other, because we found bullying, text bullying in different countries has become a real issue. New Zealand particularly had some big issues there, where in Ireland I've been dealing with text bullying. There's a major issue where we've seen some children who have felt that constantly being on, constantly accessible, and, you know, there have been some small number of cases of suicide, and some of the sensationalism again has been that it's the technology. And there may be an issue about the access and about the rules of having mobiles with you 24/7. So there are some difficulties there. But I think we were at that point where we really had to think, what can we do? We've got all these calls and a lot of regulators and governments, and I do pop around different parts of the world trying to talk to different regulators and people about these sorts of issues, and what's the best position for, you know, the industry to respond to this. And I guess some of that has been, if I was to tell you what I thought about the internet, and if you look at this BBC site, The Virtual Revolution, you'll hear similar things, that actually the struggle we've got is that it's now become much more merged platforms, more open platforms. It's becoming increasingly difficult to control. Who's responsible for the mobile now? Is it the mobile network operators, or is it the handset manufacturers now? Google, iPhone, they're all in the mix now. And I was at a meeting last week with the European Commission, who for the first time brought the handset manufacturers, or maybe the second time, to the table, Nokia, Samsung, Motorola, and saying, what are you doing about, you know, you're putting out your own handsets, they've got content, they've got applications, we've got GPS, which has nothing to do with the mobile network operators like Vodafone, to, you know, Google, to Yahoo. Everybody's in the mix now with these sort of devices, which in a sense, a mobile is almost a redundant word now. It is a mini computer in your pocket from your, you know, your games machine or your games device that you give your children, which also has online wireless capability. These are the real challenges that we're facing at the moment. So, and I think that gives a sense of how difficult this is now to control and who to go to. Who is it? If I go to YouTube, can I deal with it there? Do I have to go to the mobile network operator? Do I go to the handset manufacturer, the iPhone, or is it going to be the applications? Because, if I told you the fact that 3 billion downloads have happened on the iPhone of applications, apps are made, this is another big world that is taking a sense of the revolution, is a hold of the revolution at the moment, is that it's opened up a world for what app developers who are absolutely all over the world, from Taiwan to Russia to Sweden to everywhere, and they submit their apps to some of the big platforms, and they're distributed worldwide. So it's really is becoming a fragmented and diverse world in terms of the value chain and how we're going to bring about responsibility. So I guess Teach Today was one initiative which was really saying, well, we don't think we can control, we don't think we can, we can't, in fact, filter every single video to help teachers not be under threat because of the use of these technologies. And I guess that was a sense that it was a multi-platform, and I think some of the businesses on here represent that we had to bring social networking partners together, Google, Microsoft. You've got some of the big European and global mobile network operators. We're working on the handset manufacturers to join. But this was a place at least where it gave some sense that teachers had a chance to find out what was going on and educate themselves, because it felt that we're almost saying, and I think this is one of the problems around talking about the child protection issue. I've kind of gone off the boil. We're all going to say child protection is essential, and it is. But the biggest challenge we're finding is that teachers are themselves not equipped to teach anything about internet safety because they themselves are not safe, and they don't know how to look after their own security. We've been having lots of issues in the UK where teachers are finding themselves into disrepute because they've brought their own mobile phone into school, their own laptop. We're finding teachers being bullied by other teachers being bullied by parents who use the online communications in just the same way as in real life. These are not new problems. They've already existed. So I think it is about information and education, but I think we're going to have to do that in lots of different ways, not just from a protectionist point of view. The last thing I'll just say is we launched at Vodafone, a kind of big parent site, Vodafone, www.vodafone.com/parents, and that was, I think it's not a mobile site, it's about all technology and communications that children are using. But the biggest lesson from that was really learning that when we spoke to parents, and we did a lot of research, because you've seen already in this conference, lots of people have got great websites, and we've got them too, and they're really important because they're there, but can you get anybody to go to them? Can you really trigger the interest by parents to actually be bothered to have a look at this or find out? And I think that's the biggest question that we've got, is that parents have a lot on their daily plate, from working, you yourselves are parents, and getting out the door in the morning to coming back and getting the homework done and dealing with the reality of just being a parent, and getting this on the agenda to engage with and to consider is really problematic. And one of the things for parents that we found from the research is that they weren't at all attracted by negative messages about people going to who are their children chatting to, or that their children could be taken away and abused or bullying, because they never think of their children as bullies. They never think about their own children as being bullied. So we found that actually there was an incongruity between the perception that we have as policymakers and those in this world, that we need to sort of help parents protect their children online. Of course we do, and they need the tools and skills to do that, but the communication and the way that we engage them is fundamental, and I'm not sure going in with a frightening message or a fearful message is the way to do that. Certainly when we spoke to parents, their everyday issues of the children spending too much money on the mobile phone was more the issues that parents were dealing with in their arguments and conflicts, particularly with their teenagers. So it's a very complex world. I don't think we've got all the answers, and we're not going to have. If I told you that the mobile companies never anticipated that SMS texting was ever going to take off, that kind of gives you a sense of where we sometimes stand in this, is that we can't predict what's going to happen, and we can't even predict necessarily what technologies or online communications are really going to feature sometimes they could be here today and gone tomorrow, which we're seeing with some of the social networking. And some things are more long-lasting. I think we're very pleased with the success of SMS, as you can imagine, and it has held over for some time. So I think that probably wraps it for me. It's a complex world, and wait and see. We've all got a part to play, and I think for industry, it is very much that we do need to be responsive, and we do need to be involved. This was the first, I think it was the first in the world. I did this parents' guide for mobiles. I think this is out of date now, but it was, it's not just about putting websites out. It is about putting information in the hands of people in the hope that one day, when the issue arises in their family or the home, they might look at something like this to get some help and support. So we do have a role to play, there's no doubt about it, and particularly with things like social networking, we need to be responsive when difficult things happen, and I think that's one of the challenges we face. But sometimes, like you, as all of us, sometimes we're going to be a little bit late getting to it, but I think there is an openness, and certainly working with these companies and many of the self-regulatory issues I've been involved in, there is a willingness to do that, and we are doing a lot. It's just that don't be led by the headlines and the one incident that can change a whole landscape of dialogue and positive engagement. And I think that's the lesson I've learned, is that it has to be pragmatic and practical, it has to be achievable, and we have to do things together and in a positive way that harnesses working together and partnership, because once we start to close down and become defensive, it's not a great place really for working out solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. And now I'd like to end with Kareem, end this part of the session anyway, with Kareem Arafat, who's the founder of WatWet.
Hello, everybody. I don't have any slides, but I'm going to talk a bit about our experience at WatWet and what lessons we're getting out during the couple of years of operation. WatWet is a microblogging service that is focused for the Arab world, and it's part of a bigger company we have. It's called Toot Corp, which works significantly on localizing content for the Arab world. So we have also ictQATAR, which is a photo and video sharing service. When we started WatWet, a couple of years back, we thought, okay, let's throw a tool there and people will come. And actually, at the very beginning, we had some traction with the early adopters in Jordan, for instance. And then we lost them to Twitter. And we were like, okay, so we need to find another audience. And we went really for the mass market of segment of the market. And when you go to the mass market, I mean, there is a lot of obstacles there. One of them is basically awareness of just the digital literacy that people have in the mass market is much less than the early adopters and the tech savvy, definitely. So we started by trying to get points of interest where the mass market would be interested to start off or kind of a jump start. So we started with news and news distributing news through SMS. We found that SMS is a very powerful tool for people. Basically, with the low broadband penetration in the Arab world and the relatively high mobile penetration, SMS becomes really powerful. So, for instance, we found people are very interested in getting news, getting even news that is not from the mainstream kind of newspapers, but really the yellow kind of yellow newspapers or the alternative kind of medium. And then we started seeing also the mass using it for chatting, and we were a bit pissed at that point because we were thinking, okay, this is more about microblogging. It has to be more of personal status and all that. It was a lesson learned because eventually microblogging is also, it has this part of conversations, but then still people would not, we kind of killed the chat but then still people are very much interested on the news front. Some of the things we're doing also to kind of make people aware of digital media. We go to poor communities in Jordan, whereby people want to deliver their problems to the authorities, and we find that by teaching them how to use blogs, how to make videos, how to take photos, how to microblog, they're able to deliver their message faster. In Jordan, there is one thing which is quite interesting, is that a lot of the government officials are on the web using Facebook, Twitter, WatWet, and what happens is that the message gets it reaches the officials, and action becomes, they can start seeing action happening to whatever they started kind of complaining about. And this is something they're really appreciating that, and they're finding it very effective vis-a-vis kind of radio station newspapers. The other thing we learned in WatWet that people want to know also more of the news of the celebrities. We've found that like getting some celebrities on the platform, they shouldn't be like, it doesn't have to be like the top celebrities, the superstars, but celebrities also get a lot of kind of interest out of people to follow them. Yeah, and this is just like a nutshell, and I'll probably open it for more for the floor. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to open this session for questions, if I may. I mean, I think what we've covered in this session is about the ability to create room for development and the growth of digital communications, as well as creating and developing markets and brands which are trusted. And that's been quite important, and materials that are being prepared for that, or ways in which that might be done. But also we've touched on how regulations might respond to this very fast-changing, dynamic environment, and I'm sure we'll develop that. Question over there. If you can say who you are and where you're from, please.
Hi, I'm John LaPrise, professor at Northwestern University in Qatar. All four of you come from slightly different perspectives and roles in business. What advice can you give to governments in the Middle East for policies to drive and advance digital literacy? Thank you.
If I may start with you, Kareem.
The good news is there's a lot of policymakers in the room, so the bad news, I'm going to get myself into trouble very quickly. I think the first thing we need to do is to converge regulations between communication and media. At the moment, these two topics sit in different houses, and I know by now I probably made myself public enemy number one, but this has to happen. And unless this happens, the ownership of this dossier will remain fragmented. Let's take a case in point. If today I'm a mobile user in country X, let's take in any Gulf country, and there is content that is broadcasted or I have access to via my mobile phone, and the government wants to hold someone accountable. Who's accountable? Is it the mobile service provider, or is it the Ministry of Information or any comparable authority, because they have sanctioned this? And even in sanctioning this, it's a bit tricky, because if this is a segment that is borrowed from a satellite channel and it's being broadcasted terrestrially, does it mean it has been licensed to broadcast domestically, which is another paradigm shift? So unless we bring these two things together, the ownership of the dossier of digital literacy will remain fragmented. So for me, conversion is going to be condition precedent number one, because by the way, users and technology have already moved into that space, and we as contributor to this discussion, we're not there. I think the second one is when we introduce regulations, the regulations should be much less about enforcement and much more about reinforcement. So to the point that was made earlier by my colleague from Vodafone is, we cannot do this by fiat. We cannot do this by preventing people to go to certain destination. It's more about teaching our kids to differentiate between good and bad. We grew up without the internet, and I was certainly one of them. My parents certainly told me how to find my way in the forest of Lebanon. They didn't sort of walk with me. They didn't tell me, you don't go there. So I've ate the wrong berries. I climbed the wrong trees. So I've learned my way through this. And same thing, kids in this part of the world. So if we get the minimum level of framing, I think we can get there. And importantly, on the service provider side, whether telecom operator or content, is do it more by incentive than by fiat or by sort of punishment. That is not going to work because we're only constraining the creativity. So I'd like to stress these 2 points, which is conversions and regulation by reinforcement and incentive as opposed to sort of fiat and punishment.
Adrian, do you want to make a comment?
The weight on the shoulders of anybody from the BBC talking about how to influence governments is so great, I'm going to sidestep your question slightly. I think that what my colleague here has said, I think we should do it through incentive rather than fear. But I actually think that we should be involving young people in these policies and regulation decisions and discussions, because so many old people sit in a room and they don't understand what they're talking about. So I would like to see a lot more young people who are very smart, and when they're a bit older, they do understand the issues. And I think we have a lot to learn from them.
Please.
Well, a couple of things. One is, I've just seen in the UK and in Europe, I was at a big meeting at the European Commission earlier in October last year, who brought the Department for Education into the room for the first time. And I think if they're not here today, they should be here. If this is digital literacy, I don't know if your education regulators are here and the Ministry of Education, but I think looking at the curriculum, where your children are being taught, what they're being taught and where this is coming in is really important, and that certainly made a big difference. I think in the UK they've just managed to achieve putting it on the primary school agenda curriculum, and they're looking to do the senior young people in the next 2 years. I just have a little point of maybe difference about the involvement of children and young people, and I base this on my experience that I've gone to lots of events where I've seen children come up and present things, and I think that's great on one level, but on another level it can feel very contrived and tokenistic, and it's not why we're in the room, because we are the adults, we do have to make the decisions, and we have the wisdom. So I have a little point. I think where I've seen really good work doing, and I'm going to refer you to another programme that's just come out in the US, which has been happening for about, I think this is the second year, Frontline, Digital Nation. Honestly, it's a really brilliant programme because they're capturing children in their real life context, at school, and their families, at home, where their meeting places are, and they're capturing that and that real experience, because there's nothing worse than terrifying children of the doctors, children of academics and doctors coming to tell you their view about their digital literacy. Trust me, they're not the children that we're concerned about in many respects. And I think it's a very careful job that needs to be done, and I think it needs quite a research approach. I think the documentary Frontline, Digital Nation in America has taken that approach. It's been sponsored by Verizon Wireless, which is a mobile company there, to continue that work, and they're capturing digital logs of people's lives, people being able to interact and comment, as well as film some of their real lives, really. And I think bringing that into the room is very difficult and challenging and takes a lot of work. I'm not sure always conferences, depending on the nature and the funding of a conference, whether you can do that very well. I haven't seen it executed very well, if I'm absolutely honest with you.
I think possibly one of the things you're referring to as well is the difference between use, the ability to use media, digital media, and an understanding of what that means and the experience that goes with that. And perhaps we might come back to that again later. But Kareem, did you want, what I'd like to say while Kareem is thinking about what he's going to say is there are a number of regulators, there are a number of policymakers in this room. Please do put your hands up if you have any comments to make to that particular question, which I think touches on many of the issues we're grappling with.
Sorry. Okay.
Because it's traditional media.
Fantastic. I think, governments have to put digital media in their curriculum. Digital literacy should be taught, because what digital media is doing is that it's making people produce content along the consumption of content. And if we're talking about really producing a lot of content in the region, I think then we should also give the people that role to produce the content, and not only pouring millions of dollars into small companies and all that, or big companies, but really empowering the people to produce that content. That's it.
Does anybody want to carry on the response? I know there's one there and one there. Is there anybody who wants to carry on the response to that particular question, or are there new questions? This is carrying on. Yes, please, if I may take that one. Then I'll come back to you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibrahim Al-Zubaydi. I'm from UNESCO office in Doha. Usually UNESCO do a lot of activity on the information literacy side. The important thing, as I see from this discussion, is the content itself. As my friend, this lady, she said, the tools are not available for the teachers nor the students to build up the content. This is one of the major things. The software companies, they are usually looking for making profit. They are not looking for building the education content in the web. So we have been looking for a good useful tool to build up the content, especially in Arabic and English, into the region. And we could not find it. Okay, that's one of the difficulties that we are facing. Also, funding. Funding is important. That comes up from the big we can call supporters. Okay, to enable organizations such as UNESCO or others to build up something useful for the education system. You are right. We need to have a Ministry of Education here into this hall, and teachers and students to feed us, into what to do regarding the content building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, then we'll come to you.
To add on what a doctor said here, from a youth perspective, when a youth would like to add or help the community with a project or an idea, there's nowhere that he could go actually to get this help. From a perspective of a student, yes, we have Qatar Foundation, but if you really think about it, it's the only way or the only possibilities for students to go to. What about high school students? What about other university students? If they have the idea, or if they would like to develop or launch a campaign, because it has been proven that here in Qatar, students are very motivated in making a change. But having a lot of leaders or responsible people of companies, how are you actually working out in helping youth to actually influence youth to reach their goal? So we have Vodafone here, for example. So I understand, yes, Vodafone, but is there a program that would lead or would help youth in actually developing the understanding of internet? Thank you.
Annie, would you like to answer that?
Well, big companies like Vodafone, we have a Vodafone Foundation. You'll have a CSR department in Qatar who I will hopefully be meeting on Thursday. So I'll be talking to them about some of these issues. So, I'm sure if you stand up as a single youth campaign, are they going to support you immediately? Of course not. But I think that's something that the regulators, about how bringing together that fora, for example, in the UK, we've got this thing called, we used to have the Home Office Task Force, and now we've got the UK Council. But out of that has come industry, NGOs, government working together and building campaigns. So actually, I ought to mention, because it hasn't been mentioned and it would be really bad of me, but today is Internet Safety Day in Europe. So we all wish each other happy Internet Safety Day, by the way. So the whole of Europe is celebrating Internet safety today. And Australia and I think America also tries to support that. They're trying to build it. And I think possibly parts of the Middle East are trying to engage in that initiative as well. So it's very important to acknowledge that today. But I think those are the places when you bring that forum, and I've been part of many of them, where you bring the relevant stakeholders together with some needs analysis. So if there is a need for some development, sponsorship, and ways that that can be funded, then that can be looked at, I think. But it needs the big players to come together, including government, including NGOs, including representatives of the youth and the industry. And I think working what is the priorities, what's needed that can address some of these questions. The first question, just to quickly address that, I think, Teach Today is something we've done for teachers. It's been launched across Europe. It's launched in the UK and Germany at the moment. And it really is, from an industry perspective, we're the experts of our technology. And it's interesting, when we looked across sites, we didn't necessarily feel they were up to date. They didn't necessarily write about the right aspects of the technology that needs to be understood and the use of it. We're working with experts in teaching to build case studies that can help teachers to put lesson plans together and also reuse some of a lot of resources already exist, and some of it's about pointing to them and rehashing them or reusing them in some way, rather than because we're all constantly reinventing the wheel and we don't need to. We need to link, we need to be able to promote. So I would suggest that Teach Today is a really good place to go as a starting point, and we're very happy for the content there, to be used. Certainly I'll talk again tomorrow with Vodafone Qatar, what initiatives they've got around media literacy, and certainly be presenting that to them. I can't make any promises, but I will be drawing it to their attention. But I think it is about the state and the private sector coming together to start building some initiatives and campaigns for the public, because, as I said, we've all got a role to play in this, really.
There's one more comment around this question, and then we'll come to your question after that, lady. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Amal Sabri from Qatar University. I'd just like to add something for the governor here, that we're actually not having any problem in Qatar or in the Gulf area regarding the technology tools. Actually, it's flooded with tools. But the problem that I think we're facing here is addiction. We started to have many of our youth, and even regular, like Dr. Karim has mentioned, before 85 or after 85 born, they are really addicted to the internet. And not only to the internet, if they are not on the net, they are on the iPod or the e-boxes or actually the Wii or PlayStations or the mobiles, of course. And for us, it's not a sort of socialization. On the contrary, when you enter the home now, it's no more home. Everyone is sitting on a device and no one is communicating. So for us, we're losing our values. We're losing something. We have socialization with others across the borders, but we're losing our internal socialization. And I think that we, according to what Ahmed has mentioned, that we really need to have something from the governor to direct, at least I'm talking about Qatar, to direct with respect to learning, to have something central where the youth can go to have something central where the female can go to, either wives, some people that have any problems or they want to have some content to put on their net, and some place to go to also talk about the problems that youth are facing with BlackBerries. We start to have many fake talks going through or messages going through the BlackBerry that started to affect the community in a very bad way. These are some small things that I found out and I wanted to raise that up. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much for that comment. Very patient questioner over there.
My name is Muhammad Sheikh and I am also from Qatar University. I think one of the hurdles that I found for the digital communication literacy is the cost of communication, which has not been discussed. I think we are depriving a bigger chunk of the population from this communication because of the cost. And thanks God, Vodafone is here in Qatar, the cost has gone down. I hope that Vodafone will come into the internet communication also, and the cost will go down further. Over here, the cost of communication is way too high as compared to any other countries, especially in the Middle East. I have found that it is quite high. What do you say about that?
I'm not sure it's necessarily for this panel, unless you'd like to say something about it, Kareem, but we have got regulators, of course, sitting in the audience who are shaking their heads. No, there's... if I take it there.
I need to get on the positive side of the regulator, so I'm
okay,
trying to defend
keep quiet.
after the mess I created. No, look, first of all, the point is relevant, that cost of access is a condition precedent. Is it today the main impediment? The answer is no. Again, think of it, I don't want to go into too much technology, but think of it like the digital highway, so the highway, the means to travel on this highway, and the destination. We're not short of highways. There's a lot of technology in the ground. There's a lot of access devices, so whether the PC, the iPod, the Xbox, you name it. The lady in the back pretty much described my household, how, when I walk into my home and I see my kids, this is pretty much what I see, and most of us get to see. The issue is more around the destinations. What is it that they're experiencing? What is it that they're learning when they are traveling along that path? And there, I don't think it's an issue of cost. It's more an issue of having the right choices, having the choices that meets their needs. I tend to disagree that all of it is bad, because they're learning skills that will make them much more, I think, better citizens than we are in the future. There are abuses, as Jeff said in the morning. The internet brings the worst and the best of humanity. But I tend to look at it positively. So really, the cost used to be an issue. Competition has enabled us to overcome this issue without overt regulatory intervention. Can we go one step further? Maybe. But if this is going to be 80% of our energy, then we'll be not sort of promoting digital literacy. So I accept it, but please don't give it more emphasis than what it deserves.
Please.
I just want to comment. I have two issues. First of all, in regulating content, there should be a consistency between different contents, because they are all content. What happens, I'm taking example in my home country, Oman. We have two types of content regulated in a different way. You have the TV channels which are coming directly to homes via satellite. These are not in any way regulated. They are open, no regulation on it. Even the distributors are not regulated. Then you have TV via mobile that is regulated under another regulator, which is the same channels. You can get them either through satellite, you can get them even through broadband internet. The same ones, but they are regulated at a different. Then, what I want to suggest, that the technology is moving fast. The training or teaching at school is moving slow. We have to find a way that teaching and training at school level is on the same pace as the technology is moving. Besides, it's important to bring the communities to join you for the content regulation. What do they want? What do they want their children to be? My child, if I'm bringing him up at home, I'm teaching him what is outside, what is bad, and what is good. I should be able also to understand what is on the internet bad and good, and teach and raise my child in the same manner as if I don't have any technology. But the street teach him, the school is teaching him, the community around you is teaching him. That's all what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kareem, I don't know if you want to talk about that, because of course you're in the region offering content.
An interesting point the lady highlights is that we have a photo and video sharing service, and we found out on the web there's more regulation than satellite TV. For instance, like sometimes we might get blocked from certain regions, like countries in the region, for content that is usually aired or has like a similar kind of kind on the satellite, while on the web it's kind of regulated heavily. So it might be argued that also the web is more regulated in the region than satellite TV. The other thing is, I think, I mean, putting too much emphasis on the government to regulate might have, quite a reverse effect. And probably, I think with all the openness we're having, I think it's more kind of, it falls under to the individuals to really filter out whatever is kind of against the values and within the values. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you want to say something, Annie? Or
I don't mind saying, again, I've done a lot of work with parents and teachers in trying to get this somewhere about how you protect. Vodafone, we provide the tools on your mobile to protect your children from filtering from on the network. But right now, if they use a Wi-Fi access on a handset, they can download stuff from the internet and completely bypass the mobile network operator. So although we may be regulated to do these filtering and things, does it mean we can be a complete solution? No, and they can still access through other means now. And I think I referred to the kind of issues with handset manufacturers and other parts of the value chain that are becoming increasingly difficult to completely easily find a target for regulation. The other little bit about parenting, and to deal with the question earlier, I mean, addiction is an issue for children across the world. It's not, I don't think it's peculiar to Qatar or the Middle East in particular. I think that along lots of other issues for children. And so I think it's a hard one for parents because on one level, like many people in Europe, when they see their children using technology, they're pleased, they feel it's good, they'll give them and buy them lots of technology and give them access because they believe it's good for their education. So for parents, you're caught in a double bind between giving and wanting and supporting their education and their skill set, and at the other side, how do you protect them where you feel that they know more than you do, that they can set up the parental controls and the tools that are there to put on more than you can. And we've seen that with other technology like video recorders and things. Children are always much more adept. So I think it's an issue about parenting, about engaging with your children and having the confidence to set limits and boundaries in the same way that you do about bringing up your children in lots of other ways, about when they go out, when they come in the same way, when do you use it, when don't you use this? And being able, as a parent, having the confidence to say no can be quite challenging, but I think it's an important message.
We will have an educators session in the afternoon. Adrian, do you want to respond to that particular question at all?
No, I don't actually. I think I agree with what Annie just said. It's really, finding ways of getting your children to self-regulate and self-monitor so that they manage their behaviors.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I would like first to thank Dr. Hissa and her team for organizing this in association with the International Institute for Communication. I am enlightened. I'm a novice in this field, I don't know too much about. I came from industry mostly, so now I'm listening to an issue that's very significant and important in our life. We are talking about impact on culture, how much such digital communication literacy impact culture across the world, how much that change our life, how relationship to crimes increase in the world in general. Do we think that there is a lot of money was put for research, how much what we are really talking about has been put to find out how much what we are talking about is impacting our life around the world. I see we all talk about basically we have to increase. I am one of the people who are trying to increase internet and spreading the internet in the Kingdom, Saudi Arabia. But from reading, the little reading I do in this, the time that I have, I see very little being really discussed or even scientists has put their heads together in order to find out how much the ICT impacting our life. Really. I'm pretty sure my lady from Vodafone, you know, she was talking. I admire what BBC is doing. There are a lot of good programs. But I think somehow we ought to think carefully how much this is impacting the future generation, how much this is contributing to peace. When you go through some of the site and you see the incitement between culture, between people, or within the same culture, you wonder, are we doing the correct thing? Are we wise enough? Definitely, I know from my experiences in the field of business and economics, this is a very good thing. We are accomplishing great thing. We are learning great thing. You know, could go and search any book, any title, anything, but which is absolutely, I could communicate with people. One of our colleagues here said, it's breaking our family. You know, everybody at his laptop or he's going in the corner of the house. Now, for the Arab family, getting together is very important. Communicating with each other is very important. I'm pretty sure it is important also in the UK and another country. It's not only in our culture, but we are very knit family, we do. Now, how much this and how much in the Arab countries they are spending in terms of money, researching how much the impact and how to deal with it. I hope I didn't take longer than my time. So I thank you again for organizing this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.